Hope for the best. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Good, just play a little louder. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Bhagavad-gita Ashtotar the Sri Srimad, Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Bhagavad-gita Ashtotar the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Yeah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, on this, oh, excuse me. All right, start this. On this 17th day of October 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And I have text 52 on page 119. Was anyone here yesterday? Remember? I think that's correct.
53 is what you said, I think.
Yes, we did 52.
Okay.
I remember that long quote by Madhavendra Puri.
Yeah, but I messed it up. Okay. I was reading text 53 from chapter 2, entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized, and it's on page 120. Shruti vipratipanna te yada stasyati nishtala samadhav achala buddhis tada yogam avapsyasi. Shruti vipratipanna yada stasati nishtala samadhavachala buddhis tada yogam avapsyasi. Shruti vipratipanna yada stasati nishtala samadhavachala buddhis tada yogam avapsyasi. Shruti vipratipanna yada stasati nishtala samadhavachala buddhis tada yogam avapsyasi. Go ahead. Shruti vipratipanna yada stasati nishtala samadhavachala buddhis tada yogam avapsyasi. Anyone else on this side of the room want to try it? Okay. How about over here? You're up. Shruti vipratipanna yada stasati nishtala samadhavachala buddhis tada yogam avapsyasi. Anyone online?
Shruti vipratipanna yada stasyati nishtala
yada stasati nishtala
samadhavachala buddhis
samadhavachala buddhis
tada yogam avapsyasi.
tada yogam avapsyasi. Anyone else?
Shruti vipratipanna
Shruti vipratipanna
yada stasati nishtala
yada stasati nishtala
samadhavachala buddhis
samadhavachala buddhis
tada yogam avapsyasi.
tada yogam avapsyasi. Word by words, I'll read it myself, you read along silently. Shruti of Vedic revelation, vipratipanna, without being influenced by the fruitive results. Te, your, yada, when, stasyati, remains, nischala, unmoved, samadhao, in transcendental consciousness or Krishna consciousness, achala, unflinching, buddhi, intelligence, tada, at that time, yogam, self-realization, avapsyasi, you will achieve. Translation. Krishna says to Arjuna, when your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, and when it remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. Purport. To say that one is in samadhi is to say that one has fully realized Krishna consciousness. That is, one in full samadhi has realized Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. The highest perfection of self-realization is to understand that one is eternally the servitor of Krishna, and that one's only business is to discharge one's duties in Krishna consciousness. A Krishna-conscious person or unflinching devotee of the Lord should not be disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, nor be engaged in fruitive activities for promotion to the heavenly kingdom. In Krishna consciousness, one comes directly into communion with Krishna, and thus all directions from Krishna may be understood in that transcendental state. One is sure to achieve results by such activities and attain conclusive knowledge. One has only to carry out the orders of Krishna or his representative, the spiritual master. Om Jnana Timurandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, naturally, we need to understand this verse, as all of them, in context. So, Krishna is, the whole purpose of the Bhagavad Gita, at least on one level, is to encourage and convince Arjuna that he should fight in this battle. The book that we're reading here, the Bhagavad Gita, has 700 verses and 18 chapters. And these 18 chapters are a small, very small portion of a much larger book called the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is what's called an itihasa, or a history. It's a history of greater India. And the main, there's many things that are spoken of in the Mahabharata, but there's a main kind of a plot, there's a story that's going on. And that is the struggle of the Pandavas. Arjuna is one of the Pandavas, 5 Pandavas. They're sons of Pandu, who was the heir to the throne. He was very religious, a great devotee of Krishna, like that. And so he was scheduled to take the throne of Bharat, which is India, greater India. But he died untimely in the forest. He was killed by an accident. And so his 5 young sons, called the Pandavas, they were left without a father. Now, there were 2 wives, actually, and 2 of them were born of one wife and 3 of the other, the elder ones. So the 5 Pandavas are Yudhishthira and Arjuna and Bhima and the 2 twins, Nakula and Sahadev. And they were all very pious souls. And Yudhishthira, indeed, was, it gets kind of complicated, but he was a descendant, let's put it that way, of Yamaraj, who's religion personified. So they were all very virtuous. And Krishna is always concerned that Dharma rule in the world. He says in the 4th chapter why he comes to this planet. He comes very infrequently, personally. He sends his representatives or some other avatar, but Krishna himself, who's known as probably the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this goes into understanding how it works, that Krishna can expand. He's the master of yoga. He doesn't have all the restrictions that we have, in a material body. It's all spirit. It's a pure spiritual body, called a Satchid Ananda body. Means a body composed of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Now, we also have a body like that, but it's covered now by the material body. And we have limitations. We're not always in bliss. Sat means eternal, and Chit means full of knowledge, and Ananda is bliss. So that Krishna's form is completely like that, completely spiritual. But our body is a combination. We know we are this material body, right? And we ourselves are the spirit. So our nature is, eternal nature is to be eternal, not to die ever, to be full of bliss, and to be full of knowledge. But compare our present situation. We're certainly not eternal. I think we all know that. And there's so many things we don't know, so many things ignorant, and we're not full of bliss all the time. We try to be, and sometimes we get a little experience, but it comes and it goes, right? This is the nature of material happiness. So, but Krishna is not like that. So he comes in order to reinstitute Dharma. This is one of his missions. Because without Dharma, genuine Dharma, and I'll explain what real Dharma is because it's a famous word, but it's tricky to understand just what it means. Human life is no better than animal life. Because in one sense, we came up from the animals, right? Isn't that even Darwinian understand that? So our consciousness has come through all these lower animals. Now we have the very rare and significant human form of life. So Dharma is meant to be rules and regulations that we follow that help us to achieve the final goal of human life. And we've been studying now, and one of those goals is to end this process of reincarnation. Even without the Bhagavad Gita, people have heard of karma and reincarnation, right? transmigration of the soul. I wonder if it's really true. That's really fascinating. Let me Google it and see. It says, and sure enough, you'll find so many YouTube accounts of proof of reincarnation. I was telling some of them yesterday. People, little children often, remember something of their past life. And they'll tell something to their mothers, and mothers, where did they learn that, you know? And then they check it out and it's real, you know, you can actually, there's cases like that. So in the Vedic culture, it's kind of a given. Everyone understands, yes, that we've lived before and we live again. And we should do things in this life to get the best next life. It's just common sense. Even on an ordinary platform, when you're growing up, your mother and father may want to make sure you go to school. You know, even Prabhupada just said, he didn't want to go to school, you know, when he was young. He wanted to keep playing, you know. And his father was very indulgent. And his mother, you know, dragged him to school. No, you have to go to school. So that's it. You know, this nice little pairing, you know, Shreyas and Preyas. Preyas is the immediate happiness that you do, you know. And Shreyas is long-term, for your long-term benefit. So parents are very concerned that the children get trained, that they go to school, and then so they'll have a future, right? That's what education is all about. So that principle is there, even in our ordinary life. I think most of us here went to some kind of school, right? In elementary school, maybe college, maybe high school. So, but on the material level, it doesn't really work out, because looming ahead of you is the time factor, which ultimately takes everything away. Meaning that we all die eventually. So whatever you're able to achieve in this world, on any kind of material platform, name, fame, money, relationships, you know, it is taken away. Krishna has where he says that. Mrityu sarvaharashchaham. He says there that as death, I take everything away from anybody embodied. And let's think about it. You may be a billionaire, you may be a pauper in the street, you know, carrying your clothes and pushing the cart, whatever it is. But whether you're that, the billionaire is going to lose everything, and you're going to lose that cart eventually, you know. So the logic is, and promise of the Bhagavad Gita, and I'm going to get into its place within, because Krishna is now, he's saying there's a certain part of the Vedas that deal with improving your material condition. It's called the Karma Kanda. And there are all these rituals and sacrifices and austerities that you can perform under the guidance of qualified Brahmins, and you know, that you can improve your chances of going to heaven, or at least getting a much better birth in your next life. You know, so this is a very important part of the Vedas. And Krishna says here, I don't think he said this yet, but he says that those who don't really know the import of the Vedas, they think that's all there is. That's the essence of the Vedas. All of these wonderful rituals where you can improve your material position. But it's not. In the Bhagavad Gita, several places, Krishna says those who don't really know, who are in ignorance, they practice these rituals in the Vedas very carefully so that they can go to heaven. And some of them can succeed. So then what does he say? Tetam bhuktva svarga lokam vishal. The word svarga in Sanskrit means heaven. And then Svargalokam, they enjoy godly delights for a long, long time. You know, we can go up for, you know, how many years of actual health can we have, you know? 30, 40, 50 in a lifetime. But here, hundreds of thousands of years you can enjoy in these heavenly planets. But then it's kind of like you get a credit card. You know, you work hard and then you get certain good karma. But you're cashing in. When you enjoy up there, then you're actually using up your pious credits that you got from performing all these sacrifices, doing good works here according to the Shastra, to the Vedas. But at a certain point, you run out. And then you have to come back down again to this world, to birth and death. And so you really didn't make any progress in your human mission to end birth and death entirely and go to the spiritual world, where there's no more birth and death. That is the goal. Prabhupada explained from the very beginning. This is the actual goal of all the essence of the Vedic knowledge. And we find it here in the Bhagavad Gita and in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that's what we should strive for. So here Krishna is saying, when your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, that's the descriptions of the heavenly planets and how to go. But you're not attracted. And when it remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. So Prabhupada explains what that means. Now, samadhi is a word. I don't know how many have heard that word before? Yeah, because in yoga, right? When you practice yoga, samadhi, full absorption in the object of meditation, when the mind is completely fixed. So Krishna says that, Prabhupada says here, one is in samadhi is to say, if one is in samadhi, that he has fully realized Krishna consciousness. That is, one in full samadhi has realized Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Now these terms may not be familiar to you, they may, but the Supreme Spirit has these different manifestations. The first one is Brahman. Brahman is the white light, all-pervading, spiritual light. And the advantage of the Brahman is that you don't have a material body. You're simply in a state of pure consciousness of light, and you're free from the restrictions of the material body, and it's the eternity aspect. Sat Chit Ananda, that's the Sat part. You know, we want to realize the Sat Chit Ananda, but in Brahman we can only realize Sat, the eternal life. But you can't really stay there, even if you're able to go to the Brahman. And it means that you have to become completely detached from the material world. You know, it's not easy, and it requires a great deal of determination, and a few can get up there. But it's not fulfilling for the soul, because we are persons. We're spiritual persons, covered by this material body, and it's being reflected, you know, through the material body. But ultimately, we're persons, and we can have real bliss when we have a spiritual relationship eternally with God. And it's possible to do in all kinds of relationships we have here: friendship, parenthood. You know, we're coming up on the Damodar month, where Krishna is pastime as a little child, and kind of tormenting, quote, his mother, you know, by being very naughty, breaks a big pot of yogurt that she's churning, and he runs away, and she chases after him, and she ties him up, you know, to punish him, to make sure he doesn't do any more mischief. You know. It's all part of Krishna's Leela. It's very delightful. But this is a special month where we celebrate that. Every morning we sing a song. You're all invited. It happens about 7:30 or around that. And you know, and everything. This pastime is going on a completely spiritual platform. It's going on right now. You know, we can't see it, but it's eternal. It doesn't get old. So that's what we're aiming for. And the first step of that is to understand that we can never be truly happy with simply what we call sense gratification. The contact, we're all familiar, you know, eating, you know. We all eat, and if we eat something very nice and tasty, then that's pleasure there. There's no question about it. But it has a beginning and an end. If you don't, you know, if you get too much absorbed in the taste and you eat too much, then you suffer, right? You get indigestion. If you keep doing it, you get fat, you get diabetes, right? There's a downside. There's a big downside, and there's a big pandemic of obesity right here in America, all over the world. Because the guys who want to make money, they engineer the food so that it becomes addictive, you know? What is it, Doritos? You can't eat just one or something? I mean, it's like that.
Once you pop, you can't stop.
Yeah, right, you know? And the Coca-Cola, you know, and all this stuff.
Lab-grown meat now.
Yeah, lab-grown meat. So the point is that we have a propensity to enjoy the senses, but there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna speaks about this. He says, Yehi samsparjaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate adyantabanta konteya nateshu ramate buddha. The wise persons do not take part in sense gratification, the contact of the senses with the sense objects. And then he says, O son of Kunti, he's speaking to Arjuna, O Arjun, such pleasures are the sources of all miseries, and they have a beginning and an end, and so the wise do not delight in them. So then you may ask, well, okay, well, what kind of pleasure do we get? You know, that's the only kind of pleasure I know. So then he says in the previous verse, says, Bhaya sparsheshu asaktatma, vindityatma niyat sukham, sab brahma yoga yuktatma, sukham akshayam ashnute. It's a very wonderful verse. He says, the yogis, those who are bhakti yogis, who are meant to be yogis, they eschew, they deny this external pleasure, knowing that there's a higher pleasure within. And so, vayasparshesu asaktatma, they're not attracted. So how do they enjoy? This Brahma, say Brahma Yoga Yuktatma, linking up to the Supreme Spirit, Krishna in the heart. Sukham akshayam ashnate, and they enjoy unbroken happiness. Can you imagine? Just imagine that you can just meditate on Krishna, perform and do this yoga, and be happy all the time. Because that alone gives you so much pleasure. Now, practically speaking, in this age, the way to achieve that as quickly as possible is by chanting Hare Krishna. This mantra is very special. It has tremendous potency because Krishna has invested the names with his energies. Lord Chaitanya, many of you have heard that name. He is an incarnation of Krishna. He's Krishna himself, appearing just 500 years ago, not 5,000. He's an historical figure. And he was the one who started this congregational chanting, chanting loudly, you know. And he invited everyone. Doesn't matter your background. You don't have to be a Brahmin, you don't have to be Indian, you know, whatever. And my name will be heard all over the world. That means that every kind of race and color is going to chant. It works on everyone. You just have to be a human being. So he says, Nam Nam Akadi Bahudani de Sarva Shaktis. He said, Krishna has many different names. We have three names here. One is actually of his consort, Radharani, that you'll see when you open the curtains, those who haven't seen. But the name Krishna has a certain meaning. It's a very, very esoteric. It's the name of two syllables, Kṛṣṇa. Now, Krish is a Sanskrit root word that means all attractive, having all kinds of attractive features. The beauty, the personality, speaking power, dancing, all things that attract us to a person, you know. And then the word it means bliss. So the very name Krishna embodies this all-attractive person who can put us into complete bliss. And Rama is a name that just means spiritual bliss. So there's I won't get into the verse about that. But in these two verses that I chanted, that happiness that is unbroken, that spiritual happiness, that is the soul, individual soul, contacting the Supreme Soul and engaging in loving service. And that's how we experience real happiness. And it doesn't have to be broken. And it's not contingent on, you know, having enough muscles and everything. No, you can be old, you know. And as long as your consciousness is pure, then you can be enjoying within. And at the time of death, can you imagine approaching death without the slightest fear? We had some devotees here. The Rajendra Nandana, a very advanced devotee. It was a few years ago, just before the pandemic, he came, a couple of months before actually. And he retired here. And he was an old friend. He had lived in the temple. He had an apartment he was renting here. And he would travel around and go to fairs and sell tchotchkes. I don't know if that means anything to you. But he would spend 3 or 4 months in Mayapur, one of our holiest cities in India, where Lord Chaitanya grew up and had passed. And there was a tremendous temple there, and he had a friend who was teaching him, you know, he was in the movement. And so anyway, he came here and he retired, and he was giving wonderful classes. And then he came down with cancer. It wasn't COVID, but cancer. And he had you know, this doctor said, oh, 9 months basically, you know, the maximum. He said, forget it, I'm not going to hang around for 9 months, you know. And he basically just, you know, in a few weeks, he gave up. But he cultivated that full Krishna consciousness there, and he was peacefully left his body. We had a young lady who grew up here. There's a very wonderful devotee here named Yamunapati, and his wife at early time, maybe you don't know that, he was married to Parashakti. And they had this wonderful girl named Gora who grew up here in a nice little community of girls who grew up with her, and there was a school and everything. And then she went to the UK, she went to college for a while, then she went on a wonderful festival that's held every summer by Indrajumna Maharaj. and called it the Polish tour. He would have many devotees go up along the Baltic, and they would chant and chant, and they end up with a big festival, thousands and thousands of young people coming, like Hare Krishna Woodstock, in Poland. So she was in the UK. She went on that, and she was revived, so much Krishna consciousness, took initiation, came back here, married one of our old brahmacharis who was here, Bhishma Dev, and they set up in Alatra. I used to visit there and I see them. And it was, they would invite me for lunch and everything. But then, tragically, if you will, she came down with cancer. And so, Yamuna went there, Parashakti went there. I called a couple of times, But she was supported by her spiritual master, Indra. She would call, he's in Vrindavan, but it gets, these days, geography doesn't mean anything. So he'd get on the phone with her and encourage her and read to her, and And Yamuna was there when she passed, and he said she's just like peaceful as anything. Just like the Vaikuntha airplane came and took her back, like that. And so the reason I tell these stories is that even us, in other words, it's possible to make advancement so that you can face this final test. You're completely convinced, I'm not going to die. And your main concern is to remember Krishna. The most auspicious thing is to have devotees around you chanting Hare Krishna, reminding you of Krishna. Prabhupada, when he left in 77 in Vrindavan, he had hundreds of devotees chanting there, and it was, of course, very auspicious. So why do I mention these things? Because what can we aspire for in life? We should have some goal, and we should learn from Bhagavad Gita and other books that Srila Prabhupada has given us what that goal should be, what's really worth working for in this life. And that is to break the chain of birth and death, which means breaking the chain of all these attachments to the material world, and to cultivate that attachment for transcendence, for Krishna's form and pastimes and qualities and devotees and festivals that we have. Krishna consciousness is really meant to be a daily festival. We start out the day singing and dancing, singing to the songs to the spiritual master, chanting and meditating, trying to achieve samadhi, complete absorption in the holy name. And it works if you actually apply it. I wasn't a yogi. I like to tell my story. I grew up as a very orthodox communist. I swear to God. We were complete atheists. My father, he would bring out this book because he thought the FBI was after him. And it was from the closet. And you know what the book was? Das Kapital by Marx, translation in English. And he would read to me at the kitchen table. And in this way I became quite the leftist, you can imagine, But by Krishna's great mercy, I got seriously ill. I was living in New York at the time. And I won't explain how I got ill. I had serious hepatitis, and I was laid up for at least a month. I remember the date perfectly. It was the date of the so-called first walk on the moon. It was in July of '69, right? You remember that? I don't know if not many of you were alive at that time. So I remember watching on TV in my hospital bed, that's great, we went to the moon, But the wonderful thing, when I came out, my parents, thankfully, they welcomed me back into the house, I was about 21 years old. And I said, how am I going to get my health back? Because I was really run down. And by that time, I had been exposed to Eastern music, Ravi Shankar, and a little bit to yoga. You know about yoga? Well, let me try this yoga thing. This sounds interesting. So in those days we had, does anyone remember what yellow pages are? Remember the yellow pages? Yeah. Yellow pages, look at the yellow. So there was a yoga studio in New York. I was in Long Island, I had to drive in, And who was running that? Some of you may be familiar with Amala Bhakta Swami, who's made so many recordings. I don't know, he's in L.A. He's written some books and everything. He was a senior. He was a good, I was in the early 20s, he was early 40s. Anyway, so he taught me, that's where I first learned the bending and the stretching, and I was thin and everything. It was helping me. And of course the diet, that was important. I became vegetarian, like that. But he also taught a little philosophy, and that's where I picked up my first Krishna mantra. Apavitro pavitro va sarvavastam gatobhya yaksmade punarikaksham yabhayabhyantara shuchihi. I don't think we even knew what it meant. You know, he just sort of. but later on, when I joined the movement, I said, "Wait a minute, that's the mantra." Whenever there's an initiation, you'll hear that mantra, because devotees are meant to become more pure, purified when they're sitting around. Have you ever seen? You know, they get the beads put on the neck, and then they have to take vows, and everything. So that's one of the mantras, and it means it's very nice, whether impure or pure, apavitra pavitra va. Or been through so many different situations, it doesn't matter who you are, whatever. If you simply remember the lotus-eyed Lord, Krishna, Pundarikaksha, it's the name for Krishna, you become pure inside and out. It's purifying. I didn't even know what it meant at the time, but then but I would chant it, So the point was, Krishna, it was a difficult experience, but it was important. I was completely out for a month, and hepatitis. But it helped me to turn away from all the political stuff. The Vietnam War, there was a big thing going on. I went down to Washington many times, that was my main focus. But then my focus changed, and I got more into yoga, and eventually I went to the temple, wonderful temple in Brooklyn, which I joined in '73. And so that's been 50 years, over 50 years. And it's always the mantra that you come back to, this Hare Krishna chanting. That it's ever fresh. It's never boring. If you really focus, this is where the samadhi comes in. If you just try to hear the sound, realizing that this is pure spirit, this is God personified in His sound. It's mystical. It's beyond. But it works. Anyone who chants, you feel the effect. You feel it more, the first effect's more peaceful, enlivened, and the most wonderful thing about it is when you think about it, you become detached from so many bad habits and things, that you couldn't give up, that you're able to give up. And you become attached to mostly prasadam. Prasadam is a big attachment. The food, is cooked properly by our wonderful cook he's learning. So back to our verse. So that if you Nishchala, when the mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas. So how can we get to that point? By hearing transcendental books like Bhagavad Gita. What the Vedas are really all about. Vedas, it means knowledge. And the end of knowledge is Vedanta. Anta means end. And what is Prabhupada's name? Bhakti Vedanta. The end of all Vedic knowledge is bhakti, loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, which awakens our original nature of that loving, that prema, which is the source of the unending bliss. And it actually works. Now it's not easy to do it, especially with living in this time, Kali Yuga. But the wonderful thing about it, and this is always encouraging to me because I'm a lot older than you guys, and that is that there's no loss or diminution. We just read that a few verses ago. Nehabrikamanashosti pratyavayo navidyate swapamapasidharmasya trayate mahato bayat. Very encouraging verse right here in the text 40. In this endeavor, Krishna consciousness, there's no nasha, there's no destruction, no loss. Pratyavayo navidyate, in this effort, vidyate means exist. There is no existence of loss. Svalpam, sualpam means very little, even a little advancement on this path. Even attending one of these Bhagavad Gita classes where I'm hearing Prabhupada and like that. Even a little advance can protect you from the greatest danger, the most fearful danger. You know what that is? Losing the human form of life. Nobody dies, but you may well, by your activities in your consciousness, lose your privileged human form of life and go back down in the species somewhere. A dog, I take my walk every morning up Cass, and there's a certain crew. They're always walking the dog at that time. And there's a lot of love there, between the people and the dogs. Get up early in the morning and take them. But you can easily be fixed on the dog when you leave your body. And you'll become a dog. The most prominent thought in your mind at that time will determine your next life. So we want to cultivate between now and when we leave our body, which we're all going to do one day, to be fully thinking of Krishna. Now, Krishna will help us in this Bhagavad Gita. For instance, we're all living in this world, and we go through so many experiences, have so many sensations during the day. So Krishna says in the 7th chapter, he says, Rasoham apsukonteya pabasmi shashishuriyo. He begins the chapter near the beginning. He says, you see, all of this stuff, right, that we're surrounded with, the solid matter, the liquids, the gas, like the air, right, earth, water, fire, the electricity and all this, right? Earth, water, fire, air, ether, the space itself, and then more subtle, our mind. This is also reality. Every one of us has a mind. We can't see it, but we can certainly feel our own mind. Intelligence, discriminatory power, right? And our sense of self, the ego, very subtle material element. So all of us are combinations of these 8 elements, you see? But, I mean, our bodies are made of these things. They're inanimate. But we ourselves are higher energy. So Krishna says, these are my external separated energies. They're me. And the higher one, there's superior energy, spiritual, which consists of all the living entities. Okay, this is a way of seeing ourselves in the world. Then he starts describing the interaction of the consciousness with these objects. Raso homosakonteya. We all taste water. You drink water. I am the taste of water. You see? Because he's created the water. He's created our tongue. He's created us, the consciousness that experience the taste. So we see Krishna through his energies. An example Prabhupada always gives, a mother, first day of school. It's traumatic not only for the kid, but also for the mother, right? The first day the kid is, entrusted to the school, right? So she's cleaning up the room, and there she sees a little shoe, that he wore, maybe, when he was 3 years old. Now he's 5 years old, he's in school. So the mother, tear comes, and brings back so many memories. I remember when I bought them that shoe, and in other words, she sees her son in the shoe, because the shoe is related to the kid. So similarly, when we see everything, all of our experiences in the world, we see the sun, light of the sun and the moon, Krishna says, and remember Krishna. Oh, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, I am that light of the sun. Therefore, I remember Krishna. This is like the first step, how we can create, change our consciousness so all of our experiences are reminding us of Krishna. But what really clinches it is when we're of the mind to use the very things that we can have some control over, beginning with our own body, to connect to Krishna. Yoga. Yoga means connection. Bhakti yoga. And to do it out of love, affection, as much as we can. All right, the temple commander, he said, my duty now is to sweep the temple room floor. Okay, I'm going to do it. Well, there's Krishna. He's looking at me. Okay. So I'm going to do it with attention, as much devotion as I can, understanding that Krishna will be pleased. The spiritual master will be pleased. The devotees will be happy. When they bow down, they won't feel that grit, and sometimes they forget, and I said, because then they come around, you see these little pots here, some of you may not know. The small bowl contains water mixed with some yogurt and stuff that has bathed the deity. It's very auspicious, so we can drink a little bit. If there's any left, we can try to drink it. And then the other, we wash your hands, So we're bowing down to the deity. Then we get up, sometimes I bow down and it feels kind of gritty. And so I have to wash my hands before I take the charanamrita and after. So that's not so good. So let me wipe this, mop this floor, and so that it's really pleasing. All the devotees will be pleased. Krishna will be pleased. That's the beginning of bhakti. And Prabhupada created this society so that we have something to do from the time we get up. And if you really get up, you're really serious, 3:30 in the morning, so you can get down to Mangal Artik at 4:30, like that. This is life in Krishna consciousness. And of course, it's difficult at first. You're used to getting up at 7 to go to work or whatever, And suddenly I'm part of this ashram. Okay, I don't know if I can do it. I like to tell the first few days that I was in the ashram, it was March, and March in Long Island, it's still winter, And it was cold. There wasn't much heat in the temple. But you have to take a cold shower. It's the first test. Am I going to be able to make it, or am I going to leave the temple, So we're lighting up, you know. So I remembered, because I was practicing yoga, there's a heating breath. I don't know if you know, you can breathe real fast. And actually, it heats the body a little bit. So this is what I'm going to do. So I got into the shower, no hot water, turned the cold water on, got under the, you know, soaked up real fast, you know, rinsed off. 16 seconds later, I'm out, you know, toweling up. Success. My first test in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, I could have just walked out the door, you know. But that's what Krishna consciousness is. A certain test, and you find that if you're sincere and you're chanting Hare Krishna, praying, that Krishna gives you the spiritual strength. You know, just like we have our wonderful book distributors. It's really a challenge to go out, you know, to the park or the college, wherever it is, and set up the table and try to meet random people and sell them a book. You know, it's a challenge because it can be humbling, you know. I was never able to get over the hump with that. But luckily, I was able to work on producing the books. So in this way, I contributed somewhat. But that, you know, but any of the book distributors will tell you, those who are kind of seasoned, and we have 3 who are really amazing. One has been doing it since 1978. I knew him in Miami when I lived there in '83 and through '89. He was a huge book distributor then. He's a huge book distributor now. The International Book Distribution Minister is living here in the temple. Vijay, yeah, we're very fortunate to have him. So, but he's very blissful, and he tells all these wonderful stories, and he's got these students, Govardhan and Dvijamani, who's from Russia, and trying to get asylum here. But they're very, you know, telling these wonderful stories, how they were counted. You know, there's many people say, "Are you kidding? Get out of here," you know. But there's some who are very attracted. And it's such a fulfilling thing. You're doing it for Krishna, to try to introduce them to Krishna for their benefit, you know. And you can see they're very blissful and fixed. So anyway, Krishna is telling Arjuna, don't get involved in this heaven, you know, trying to go into heaven. When you give that up, say, when your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, when it remains fixed in trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. So we're fortunate to have these books that Srila Prabhupada has given us. If we just read them and study them and try to follow them, we'll be, you know, benefited. We can't even conceive how much. Well, kind of took most of the time. That was 53. Oh, so Arjun asked a question. So that'll be good. We'll get his question, then we'll proceed tomorrow. One more class this week. And then there's a very important section coming up, starting 55. Arjuna Vacha Stita Pragyasya Kabasha Samadhistasya Keshava Stitadhi Kim Pabhasheta Kimasita Bhajeta Kim. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, what are the symptoms or characteristics of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak, and what is his language? How does he sit, and how does he walk?" Purport: as there are symptoms for each and every man in terms of his particular situation, similarly one who is Krishna conscious has his particular nature: talking, walking, thinking, feeling, etc. As a rich man has his symptoms by which he is known as a rich man, as a diseased man has his symptoms by which he is known as diseased, or as a learned man has his symptoms, so a man in transcendental consciousness of Krishna has specific symptoms in various dealings. One can know his specific symptoms from the Bhagavad Gita. Most important is how the man in Krishna consciousness speaks, for speech is the most important quality of any man. It is said that a fool is undiscovered as long as he doesn't speak. And certainly a well-dressed fool cannot be identified unless he speaks. But as soon as he speaks, he reveals himself at once. The immediate symptom of a Krishna conscious man is that he speaks only of Krishna and of matters relating to him. Other symptoms then automatically follow, as stated below. So once again, we come down to the importance of sound vibration. It all begins with the sound vibration. That's where our consciousness is going to be made. And so therefore I'll end with a nice little poem. Let's see what I can remember. Okay, so this is a poem that I wrote. We have time for this. There's no Sanskrit to it. It describes the fall and redemption of the soul. You see? You seen that one? Where Krishna lives, felicity abounds. With pure simplicity and loving sensibility, all serve him with humility. But when a living entity rejects his true identity, and that of sheer stupidity surrenders to cupidity, he loses all sagacity, and with it all capacity to understand reality or curb his sensuality. Abandoning humility, he touts his own ability, forgetting his fragility and fortune's volatility. Immersed in asininity for what seems an infinity of lives devoid of piety, he suffers in anxiety, till contact with God's devotee, perhaps of utmost brevity, awakens his affinity for words of the divinity. Perceiving the futility of all his imbecility, the soul regains his sanity and casts away his vanity. Endowed with new humility, he serves with all ability and growing spontaneity his guru and the deity. Regaining his identity, the wayward living entity returns to the fraternity of Krishna for eternity. So we're all we're all on that parabola. You know, I have a slideshow that goes with that also. So we should try to awaken our affinity for words of the divinity more and more by coming to Bhagavad Gita class and reading Prabhupada's books. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much.
That could be on the radio.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. I think it's like with music now, the way it times like that, absolutely.
All right, Dakota. I want you to memorize that. You know.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, we memorize that.
I'm kind of shy, but
No, well, you know, we're friends all here. You see, memorizing it, you'll get you.
I really like research. You're really good at memorizing. I mean, you really are.
That's. I've forgotten a lot of shlokas. I forget little parts of them. Then I have to look up in the book.
I know, it's really amazing.
Oh.